What's going on, everybody? My name is C4. Welcome back to more C4. Now that the dust has settled, the Eagles' 2025 NFL draft class is set in stone. We've had a good pool of undrafted free agents sign, enough so that it honestly might change how I feel and approach in this video our day 3 picks, because I did like some of the guys. I had draftable grades, I'll say, on some of the guys we got in UDFA. It's weird looking at Eagles Twitter right now. I feel like the fan base is kind of split. I feel like the fan base has grown spoiled by Howie Roseman dominating the draft. That kind of just a normal draft feels underwhelming. I see other people that kind of have this draft as a very top-heavy draft, and it's Jihad Campbell or bust. And everyone else is kind of just role players that's going to fall on our first-round pick. We don't have the luxury like we did last year, landing Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, where everyone is just over the moon like we dominated. How did this happen to us? Where this year it feels a little more reserved and maybe tinfoil hat theory time. I do feel like there's an element of teams maybe don't want to do business with Howie Roseman. They're sick and tired of him being the media darling. Now, I do believe that, and then I also believe on the other side, I don't think teams would sabotage getting good trade value if they want to move back just because the Eagles and Howie Roseman, they just despite them. So maybe there's somewhere in the middle is the truth. But I feel like Howie wanted to be aggressive in this draft. There was no willing trade partners. A couple times we got sniped, as highlighted by how many times we would trade back, maybe frustratingly trade back for seemingly little value. But this is the draft class we gotta rock and roll with. We gotta see how it all breaks down. I'm gonna go through every single pick and highlight some of my favorite UDFAs, and let's see how this class grades out. We're going to start in the first round with Jihad Campbell falling all the way down to the Philadelphia Eagles. On one hand, I'd like to sound very smart and say I had multiple mock drafts where Jihad Campbell was my dream pick for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, to humble myself a little bit, those drafts were done before we re-signed Zach Bond, and my logic was if you can't bring back Zach Bond, if we get priced out of Zach Bond, if Howie doesn't want to pay the linebacker, this is the Swiss Army knife. This is the all-around baller that I think could come in and potentially replace him. And then I did have still one mock draft after we resigned Zach Bond saying, you know what, if the board falls and Jihad Campbell's there, you know what's better than one Zach Bond? 2 Zach Bonds. I did not, however, have him as a blue chip player in this year's class, like some people had. Some people that are smarter than me who's just trying to pretend to be very informed about the draft on the internet. I had him kind of as a bubble guy, maybe first one out. And the only reason why I didn't have him outright as a blue chip player is just the question mark about what his best position is. You have to figure that out. And I feel like to get a true blue chip status, you have to be a for sure thing. And there's a fact, I like to think Vic Fangio is going to get it right. But you've seen Isaiah Simmons coming out of Clemson, went to Arizona, has never, unfortunately, just hasn't ever worked out. You get these kind of hybrid players that, if the wrong coaching staff can't find their position, they're just going to fall along the wayside. That is why with the bad situation, Jihad Campbell might not ever reach his potential because there's that question mark about finding his best fit, his best position. That's the only reason why I held off giving him blue chip status. Now, with him coming with Vic Fangio, having the success he just had with Zach Bond, I think in hindsight, I now would like to bump him up to blue chip status within this Eagles defense. Ergo, I'm giving this an A+ pick. This is an outstanding value pick for the Philadelphia Eagles. This one felt nice in hindsight looking back at the Philadelphia Eagles draft because this is the kind of pick that we're used to. The kind of pick where seemingly the rest of the league overthinks a player and how does he fall to the Philadelphia Eagles. You look at the athletic profile of Jihad Campbell, you get a player, he didn't test in agility, didn't do the vert. I guarantee watching how he plays, he is one of the most, if not the most explosive defensive player not named Abdul Carter that went in this first round. So I imagine the vert, I imagine the agility testing would hold in line with a player that is a 9.8 RAS score playmaker. When you look at the body of work of Jihad Campbell, 117 tackles, 11.5 TFLs, 5 sacks last year, you see a guy that can drop into coverage, not at an excellent rate. I think that's probably the difference. If you're looking at Zach Bond, you're looking at Jihad Campbell, and I say, what's better than 1? Zach Bond, let's get 2. Jihad Campbell, I think, gives up a little bit of the coverage that we saw in Zach Bond last season, but I think you get a lot more explosive of an athlete. I think you get a lot more pass rush ability at a Jihad game. I think you get a lot more smash mouth at the line of scrimmage. I think I guarantee you, at least at some point next season, Jihad Campbell is going to highlight on a poster a running back trying to block him, and he's going to get a sack. Like, it is going to be something simply absurd that's going to look freaky, and I can't wait for it. And I hope it's, I don't know. Actually, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to put it on Cam Scatabo going to the New York Giants. He is now the enemy. Okay, I'm sick of that. We're going to say maybe Brian Robinson or something like that. That'd be cool to see. And I think the similarities, we heard it during the press conference with Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni, that they pretty much compared him to Abdul Carter and Micah Parsons. Howie Roseman's like, there's been a couple Penn State linebackers that are built like Jihad Campbell, where they're just like off ball, but they can rush the passer. Jihad Campbell is kind of a budget version of that right now, I think, as it stands. He has the injury. I believe it's a labrum, and it was a slight tear. So doing my Google doctoring, it seems like 4 to 6 months is the recovery time, assuming it's on the lesser side because it's only a slight tear. He might miss a little bit of training camp. It looks like, I'm going to say August. So it's kind of in line with Cooper DeJean last year. Is that why Cooper DeJean fell to the Philadelphia Eagles last year? Teams were scared about the injury. And is this just the rich getting richer in a very similar situation with the Philadelphia Eagles? Now, the bummer of that is that it took Cooper DeJean a little bit to get on the field, a little bit for Vic Fangio to trust him. And maybe that would be the worst case scenario, the annoying situation with Jihad Campbell, where Vic ain't putting anyone out there until they're ready. And maybe losing out on some of those reps might take a little bit longer than the fans want for Jihad Campbell to get on the field. But as far as a playmaker is concerned, as far as pairing him with Vic Fangio, very easy, an A-plus score here. Out of the second round, the Philadelphia Eagles select Andrew Mukuba, who at that point, I did in my reaction video, he was my number 2 player on the big board for the Philadelphia Eagles at that selection. I had Braden Swinson at number 1, and Swinson fell to the 5th round. Can't believe we didn't draft him, but that's just me being draft stop. Makuba, one of my favorite safeties in this year's class. My spicy take was I had him ahead of Nick Amenwari as my number 2 safety in the class, behind Malachi Starks. I did have Malachi Starks, Malachi Starks, Makuba, Amenwari. And then it was, again, for Amenwari, 10 athleticism, 10 out of 10 athleticism, but I think there was just such and we've seen it with those freak of nature safeties, like you just have to go with the right staff. If you go somewhere else that doesn't know, you're going to be a special teamer for the rest of your life. We've seen it with Obi Melifonwu. We've seen it with Taylor Mays. I hope it works out. But I thought Makuba on the field as a football player, he was everything as a football player that Amenwari was as an athlete. I love watching Andrew Mukuba play. See a lot of similarities now ever since he's been drafted. People are like, oh, he's going to be our CJ GJ. Now, he gives up a little bit from a weight standpoint to Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Kind of surprising as well that Philly drafted him in the second round, given his athletic profile. That is very much not an athletic profile that Howie Roseman and the Eagles have been targeting. We have been targeting freak of natures. We've been targeting players that are 9+. And getting Makuba out of 5. As soon as I saw that, I wanted him on the Eagles. I did not think it was a realistic possibility. I thought he might have tested himself out of being of interest for the Philadelphia Eagles. But we are getting a guy, when I watched Texas play last season, we had Jahdae Barron, who went in the first round to the Denver Broncos. Good player. Makuba was still the best defensive back I watched on that team last season. Last year, 69 nice tackles, 4 TFLs, 11 PBUs, 5 interceptions. This guy was an absolute playmaker. He was a heat-seeking missile in the run game for a slight frame, no fear, which is something that you want. Honestly, in the run game, when he had a hit on the Stockton from Georgia. I'm sure you've probably seen it on social media where unbelievable hit. He has a couple other big ones. He had a couple real nice open field tackles on Cam Scatabo in the playoffs, and everyone knows Scatabo is a broken tackle machine. He just loves for contact, and a little player like this, the technique to bring him down. He kind of reminds me of Sidney Brown in relation to how he just heat seeks guys. However, unlike Sidney Brown, I think he has the technique. I think he has the ability in space. I think he has the IQ to kind of rein it back a little bit. As much as I want to be patriotic as a Canadian, say Sidney Brown this is his year. He's going to be a starter. We invested a decent pick in him. It's going to be him and Reed Blankenship. I'm going to keep saying it, I don't think Vic sees him as a starter. I think Vic thinks he's too boomer bust to kind of be featured on the last line of defense for this Philadelphia Eagles team. And someone like Makuba, who's a little bit more technically sound, I think will play within Vic Fangio's structure a little bit more. would be more on brand. I love the player. This is one. I think this is a very polarizing pick right now for Eagle fans. Some people are, this is kind of the tipping off point because we didn't have that third round pick. He is our day 2 selection. I think I'm going to throw this as a B trending towards a B+, and the only reason why is even though I love the player, even though in the NFL it's nothing like a mock draft simulator, if you like a guy, you got to go get him there. It's kind of like fantasy football. In fantasy football, you might have a running back that you want to wait in 4th round. Every mock draft you've done ahead of your fantasy football draft, he's gone there in the 4th round. But maybe in the 3rd round, if you want to guarantee that you can get him, maybe you overpay for a good player. I think that's what happened here with Philadelphia. But I think the optics of Makuba I had a 3rd round grade on him. Reaching to get him in the 2nd round, I can appreciate, I can respect it. I don't love the value. I think it's a little expensive. That hurts the grade. I think player fit, Eagles getting Makuba. If this was a 3rd round pick, this is trending A+, AA+. The fact that he is all we leave day 2 with, and we had to get him in the 2nd round, it hurts it just a little bit, but I love the player, and I will say right now, I will not be shocked if he ends up starting over Sidney Brown. With no 3rd round pick, our next selection didn't come till the 4th round, where we got Tai Robinson, D lineman from Nebraska, made a big board for the Philadelphia Eagles going into day 3 of guys that I wanted them to target, and he was right up there with my top defensive lineman selection. And here's why. We got a little off-brand, athletically wise, going Makuba. Like the football player more than the athlete, fine with it, can live with it. But we got right back to our bread and butter, drafting freak of nature athletes with Tai Robinson in the 4th round. A 9.89 RAS, elite speed, elite explosion, great agility grade. He is absolutely going to target as, I think it's going to be him and Moro Ojomo that are going to be eating into the reps, trying to replace what we are losing in Milton Williams. Last season, Tai Robinson, in a long starting career in Nebraska, has been there forever. But in 2024, had his breakout, 37 tackles, 12.5 TFLs, and 7 sacks. You pair that with a guy that is great frame. You pair that with a guy that's an exceptional athlete. You put a guy that maybe, the knock on him could be, ceiling. Is he at his ceiling? Are you getting what you're getting? Is that why an athlete like this fell to that spot? Because he's going to be 24, so a little bit on the older side. Maybe this is all he's ever going to be. He's going to be a part of a pass rush rotation. He might not ever break out like a Milton Williams, and in 4 years' time, Tai Robinson's getting $26 million guaranteed. But I think for what the Philadelphia Eagles need this year, which is athletes on the inside that you can put next to Jalen Carter, you can put next to Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter has to sub out, that can give Philadelphia some juice on an interior pass rush as part of a rotation. He's everything you could ask for in that pick. And honestly, I'm going to be going back to the well here a little bit. I don't want this to come up biased. I don't want to come off like a glazed out roast. I love this pick. I'm giving it an A. I felt like at that point in time, looking at the board, as good as any pick we could have made in that spot. I think, honestly, in hindsight, if this was our 3rd round pick, if we didn't have to trade back in, at the end of the day, we left day 2 with Makuba and Tai Robinson, I would not lose any sleep over it, because stylistically, this is the type of athlete we needed to add to the defense. This is the type of player to pair along big RAS, big freaking natures that we have. Ojomo was a 9+ RAS player. Thomas Booker was like a 9.8, 9.9, very similar. He's closer to a Thomas Booker athlete than he is a Moro Ojomo athlete. But adding that to that rotation, a pro-ready player, I thought the value was there. I thought it made sense. I like going back to getting the athletes. So I'm giving this one an A. Maybe overvaluing it slightly, but the fact that I think the player fit, scheme, what he's going to bring, pro readiness, all those things check the boxes. Saw Cam Jurgens react. He was a big fan. They were teammates at Nebraska. That's good for team synergy as well. A every damn day. Now we start the 5th round and we go after Mac McWilliams, corner out of Central Florida. Gonna be honest, was not on my radar whatsoever, but did a little bit of a deep dive. Dane Brugler, the Beast, had him as a 5th round pick. Love and trust his evaluation almost as much as any draft expert in this community. So it's on value. The range and price point certainly checks out. I've seen a little bit of deep dive, some little threads going on over on X, and he had some of his best games going up against some of the best corners that Central Florida went up against last season. Tet McMillan, when they played Arizona, didn't give up a lot of ground. So you're getting a feisty corner, also an ascending player, had a standout at the Senior Bowl, was one of the winners from the Senior Bowl. I think with it, when it comes to corners, I think stylistically, he's going to come in and replace the versatility of Avonte Maddox. He's an undersized corner that NFL standards is kind of a slot, but he has plenty of experience between UAB and Central Florida as an outside corner. So there is, clear versatility. That's kind of weird too, that like, assuming we let Vic Fangio have a lot of influence over some of these picks just because we had defense early, there was a theme that he was looking for kind of smaller, maybe not prolific athletes in the secondary. Makuba, by all means, is undersized and not a freak athlete. McWilliams is slightly undersized and not a freak athlete. But hey, that 4.41 certainly will translate, athletically speaking, even though I think from a depth chart standpoint, he's going to kind of fill into that Avonte Maddox role. Avonte Maddox was a very, very good athlete, very special athlete. Don't really get that with McWilliams here, but the production is not too bad. You look at his stats last year for a corner, 6.5 TFLs, 3 PBUs, and a pick. Year before that, he had 9 PBUs. Year before that, he had 11 PBUs. So made a lot of plays on the football. Only 2 picks in his college career. But you get a guy that, for whatever reason, caught the eye of Vic Fangio. And I know this is blind. I know this is not maybe the hard-hitting, overly negative reaction and reviewing grades that some of us, especially in YouTube, negativity sells. And I usually have been one of the more negative people in this community. But I think when it comes to the offensive line and when it comes to defensive players, with the role that Stoutland has been at finding guys and developing them, and what we saw last year in only 1 year, very small sample size of Vic Fangio, if the same thing that clicked in his brain saying Quinyon Mitchell over Terry and Arnold and go whatever price, get me Cooper DeJean in the second round. If something like that showed on Mac McWilliams for Vic Fangio, who the hell are we to say, I don't know. We got a guy that's proven player. We got a guy that has versatility. We have a guy that played his best games against the biggest competition in Central Florida, ascending Senior Bowl player. I mean, I'm not going to dog it. It's a C. Let's wait and see. That's why, pun intended. Let's trust Vic Fangio, and let's see what McWilliams. He'd be one of those guys that would be classic. Watch him be like sick in the preseason. Be like, oh, okay, I get why Vic wanted him. But go see. It's kind of like a wait and see pick. Next up in the 5th round, we go back to the Georgia pipeline, back to the give me a best athlete on the board pipeline. Smile Mundon, linebacker from Georgia. Love this pick. I love kind of getting back to a rhythm. It's the yin and the yang of this draft. We go Makuba, not really an Eagle athlete. Then we follow it up, Tai Robinson, perfect athlete. We go Mac McWilliams, not really an Eagle athlete. Followed up with like a perfect Philadelphia Eagles athlete in Mundon out of Georgia. You look at the athletic profile. 9.42 in the RAS. In his scouting report, Kirby Smart said one of the best athletes he's been around. So even though we don't have the vert and the agility testing, I'm going to assume that it's not red flag worthy. I'm going to assume that grade would be green. Maybe not elite, but elite to great. Somewhere in that range. A 9.42 RAS. Now, a little light in the ass, as they say. 224 pounds. Could be a little surprising, but the pedigree is certainly there. Georgia Bulldog, check. I'm not going to say outright freak of nature athlete because you don't have all the testing here to confirm that, but we're going to say great athlete. Former 5-star recruit, so that is like the pedigree that Howie Roseman has valued over years. You look at his production at Georgia, I mean, maybe one of those classic, and I feel like that's the case for a lot of Georgia Bulldogs. When have we drafted a Georgia Bulldog based off of ridiculous production? I mean, Nakobe Dean did have really good numbers, but like Nolan Smith never had crazy numbers. Jalen Carter never had crazy numbers, especially nowhere near like the level he's playing at right now. Jordan Davis never had like insane, that guy, holy crap, how did he follow us type numbers. And I kind of feel like that's the same with Mundon. Last year, 57 tackles, 3.5 TFLs, 3 sacks, 3 PBUs. Kind of is what it is. Like those are, it's just, I don't know. It's so much rotation. There's so much depth on a Georgia Bulldogs defense that it feels like there's never going to be a guy that has like staggering production or anything like that. But you look at Mundon, he's a long athlete, almost 80.5-inch wingspan. So that's a guy that's going to be able to get, passing lanes, throw his hands up. I'm actually surprised for as long of a linebacker he is that he only has 6 career PBUs at Georgia. But I think value-wise, he was a guy that was projected to go 3rd, 4th round. We got him in the 5th round, so there was good value there. And if he could stay healthy, he's had a little bit of, almost kind of every year, some sort of injury come season's end, which injuries and Georgia off-ball linebackers not worked out great for the Philadelphia Eagles to this point. Shout out to Kobe Dean. Love to see him get back healthy, get back out on that field and fight for his spot. There are some reasons why. Maybe for a guy that was projected to go 3rd, 4th round, fell to us in the 5th round. But for a sideline player that can do a little bit of, brings a little bit of juice to a pass rush, he can blitz with that athleticism. Where the perceived value is, I think Philly had to leave this draft with 2 linebackers for sure. Depending on how they view Jihad Campbell, if he truly is like a utility piece, I'm going to assume that Jihad Campbell will, best case scenario, play with Zach Bond as a starting. But looking at the depth at linebacker, assuming Nakobe Dean's not going to be playing anytime soon, unfortunately, you had Jeremiah Trotter Jr., you had Ben Van Sumeroon, who I think I personally, fine, have him be a little bit of a two-way player. I want him out there as a fullback. I love seeing him out there as a fullback, lead blocking for Saquon Barkley last year. Other than that, we are incredibly light at linebacker. So I think we had to get 2. Jihad Campbell at 1, Smail Mundon at 2, fits the bill. So I'm going to give this one an A grade. Very happy with the selection. Made a lot of sense for the Philadelphia Eagles. The value is there. The player profile checks out. Happy with that one. I'm going to finish up the 5th round. I don't know why this graphic was a little bit smaller. I took them all from the same page. Whatever. We got Drew Kendall, center guard out of Boston College. This was probably one of my more frustrating picks that I was like, all right, whatever. But I came around on a little bit. This was just being a draft stomp, given some of the players that were still available, some of the perceived needs for the Philadelphia Eagles. Going interior offensive line, especially after we just paid Cam Jurgens, was maybe a little rich. However, when you start to look at the fact that, let's actually get rid of this right now, Brett Toth has kind of been around for a while, but our center depth behind Cam Jurgens to that point was Landon Dickerson. We saw when Jurgens had to lead the game, we had to shuffle the line around so Dickerson could move into center, and then you'd have Steen go to guard when Becton was still there at right guard. It's a lot of moving pieces. And clearly that is not the stability that the Eagles wanted for the offensive line. So they said, you know what? At this point, let's go get a straight-up backup center. They listed him as a guard, which might help him a little bit because the more positions you can play, the more likely you will dress on game day. When you look at the athletic profile of Drew Kendall, also, that checks out. And, kind of talking about this pick, anything negative that I may say about a player can be outright eliminated because Stoutland said, yeah, get this guy. I like this kid. And it's Stoutland. Gives the golden finger. If he points to a player on the board that's on the offensive line, I think Howie Roseman has to oblige at this point and be like, yes, Stout. Yes, sir, Stout. Yes, that's the only thing you say. When Stoutland comes and says, get this kid, yes, sir, is the only appropriate response if you are Howie Roseman. So if he ends up being top depth behind Cam Jurgens, which is likely what's going to happen, I get it. You're trying to, at this point, find maybe depth guys, because in the best case scenario, he never sees the field. Maybe that's why I'm a little bit lower on this pick. Best case scenario, Drew Kendall will never play. And to look at some of the other positions that we might be a little bit lighter on that we could have addressed at this spot for guys that absolutely could potentially play for the Philadelphia Eagles at some point, maybe that's where you come against the value, but it's a depth move that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to give this one a C because the athletic profile checks out. Again, perceived value. You look at Dane Brugler, had him graded as a 4th round pick, so getting him at the ass end of the 5th round, there's at least value if you're judging his expert board. He was a first-team All-ACC last year, and perfect for our scheme fit. He is a zone blocking center that can get out in space and get to the second level, and that's exactly what we need. So I don't hate this pick, but when you look, I like to think when you take these swings and you take these flyers, I very much am not going to disregard what he can bring to depth, because if Jurgens goes down and he ends up being a really good fit for the team, it's going to make a lot of sense. I just felt like at this price point, best case scenario, and you want to almost view every single pick best case scenario. Best case scenario for Drew Kendall, never sees the field because we have Cam Jurgens at 25 years old, who hopefully will start for the entirety of his contract, the same way Jason Kelsey did as an Iron Man. Where does he sniff the field? But from a depth spot, it makes sense, so we won't be too harsh. We'll give it a C, kind of C+, because it makes a lot of sense, and we trust Stoutland. Now moving on to the 6th round, we start by going quarterback, Kyle McCord. Now, there is always, and because kind of the front office didn't come out right and say that they absolutely were not drafting Shedeur Sanders, that whole, the NFL Network, that's what I was watching for my broadcast, was like, Philadelphia could get Shedeur, and then Cleveland jumps him, gets Shedeur Sanders, and then kind of the next round we go quarterback. They didn't do themselves any favors from spacing themselves out from that potential scenario. But we go grab Kyle McCord, the quarterback out of Syracuse. Now, for someone that has watched a lot of college football, it is kind of hard to forget Kyle McCord at Ohio State. Now, the year that he played, he wasn't brutal. 3,100 yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 picks. I swear to God, like 5 of those 6 picks were some of the worst throws I've ever seen in my freaking life. And then he transferred, went from kind of a game manager role at Ohio State to at 2024 at Syracuse. They just let him rip. 4,700 yards passing, 34 touchdowns, 12 picks, had 3 rushing touchdowns. Broke several Syracuse passing records in only one season, one and done. Local kid, grew up a Philadelphia Eagle fan. The story is there. You have a guy that pocket passer. Like, it fits the bill. Like, the similarities between Kyle McCord, former 5-star recruit, highly recruited, not maybe stylistically the type of quarterback you think would be a perfect fit for Philadelphia. You know, those are a lot of the same things that we have with Tanner McKee. Tanner McKee was a high recruit when he went to Stanford. When we got him, and now he's our Lord and Savior on the backup quarterback, one of the most important roles in Philadelphia. Everyone loves Tanner McKee. A lot of those checks out with McCord. A lot of similarities there. Pocket passer, good arm talent, a guy that's a backup that could potentially ascend to a starting role. Those are the exact same things that were said and could be said to this day about Tanner McKee. And if Philadelphia, they've been getting the tires kicked around potentially Tanner McKee as a trade piece at some point, because I think we all agree. Tanner McKee, I thought last year, if you're ranking the top 32 quarterbacks in the NFL, Tanner McKee was in that top 32. From what we see in the preseason, what we saw in the season finale against the Giants in spot duty, everyone was upset that we had Kenny Pickett on this roster last year. Everyone was upset that we traded for Kenny Pickett because we knew what we had in Tanner McKee. So somewhere along the line, Tanner McKee could get traded. Someone like Kyle McCord absolutely fits the bill as a suitable backup. However, I'm giving this one a C again, and that's kind of like that's why I think I'm in line with the vibes around the fan base. It was kind of like going to day 3, like, I don't hate these picks, but are these the best picks? Are these the best fit? I feel like this pick here was a little disrespected to Tanner McKee. Unless there's things in motion to move Tanner McKee off this roster, do we need 2 Tanner McKees? We just got Dorian Thompson-Robinson in a trade from the Cleveland Browns. Like, looking at our depth chart right now at quarterback, we have Hurts, McKee, Kyle McCord, DTR. You're not going to keep all of them. Is the plan to rock and roll with McKee and stash Kyle McCord on the practice squad? And if that's the case, you know, if we're drafting practice squad guys, not taking full Hail Marys for guys that could crack the 53, could have insane camps, would be the next big draft story. Yeah, I think C's fair. That's a wait-and-see type pick. Could be a practice squad stash, but I do think the similarities between him and Tanner McKee are very easy to make the connect, so I don't outright hate it. And anytime we bring, like, he fills the Kenny Pickett role of having an Eagles fan as a backup quarterback on our roster. Here on the 6th round, we got back-to-back Stoutland U candidates. We start with Myles Hinton, the tackle from Michigan by way of Stanford. He was a top recruit when he was coming out of high school, 4-star tackle, one of the top. I think he was 5 or 6 in his class. I'm not gonna lie, though, didn't know, like, this was kind of a surprise pick. Dane Brugler had a 5th-round grade on him. We got him in the 5th round. Stoutland U, 6'6.5", 82-inch wingspan. Didn't really do much testing. Put up 19 reps on the bench press, so it wasn't anything staggering there. You're just kind of getting a traits-based tackle. Footwork was brought up as a positive, which is something that Stoutland usually likes to prioritize on his bigger athletes. If you're a gigantic tackle with things you can't teach from you can't teach size, you can't teach wingspan, you can't teach et cetera, and you have good footwork, Stout's like, I will get you there with the technique. I'll coach you up and get you ready. I feel like Hinton kind of fits that bill. Not my favorite tackle that was on the board. I will say at this point, if I swiped out Hinton for a guy that we got as a UDFA, I would have a little bit different of an opinion on it. I mean, it's Stoutland U. This is a traits-based tackle. Absolutely has the pedigree. And he's enrolling and, might not be in practice squad stash, but you got to trust Stout. We go back to back. We go grab Cameron Williams next in the 6th round. I like this one a little bit more. This was a guy that at some point in time during the draft process, he was getting 1st-round potential grades. Kind of fell off a little bit. Didn't get the test. Kind of didn't finish out the season with Texas as hot as he might have liked. But you are getting 6'6", 335 pounds, 85-inch wingspan. He was rehabbing off an injury, so he didn't get any testing numbers for it. But I mean, again, I wouldn't assume and wouldn't project that he is going to be a freak of nature athlete similar to Mekhi Becton. But I think size-wise gives you a lot of Becton. I think he could be that role of just gigantic human being that could potentially be a big right guard, if not keep him as a swing tackle. I like the value here. I thought a little bit of a buying the dip type prospect, which I think Philly did in free agency, buying these guys that, you know, your Azeez Ojularis, your Josh Uches that had really interesting peaks, still their best football, could be considered in front of them, but coming off a little bit of down here, that is when you strike when the iron's hot. And I think that maybe that's the case with Cam Williams. If this was the first half of the college football season, he was a guy that was getting first, second round grades. Kind of slowed down a little bit, ended up with a 4th round grade, getting him in the 5th round. It's another one that I think is I'm a little bit more bullish on, a little bit more familiar with this game, watched him play a little bit more at Texas. So I'm going to give him a B, but it's just another enrollee in the Stoutland U. Let's see what Stout can do. And we finish up the draft with technically a Florida Gator. He was a 4-star recruit for my Gators. Unfortunately, had to transfer away to Virginia Tech to play his best football. Antoine Powell Ryland, edge rusher from Virginia Tech. How did this guy fall to this spot? He fell in the lap of the Philadelphia Eagles. We have, let's just see. Okay, so it's like, okay, well, is he a good athlete? Well, let's see. Okay, 6th round pick. Oh, a 9'18". Okay, maybe not ideal length. 6'2.5", 258. That's not brutal. Especially, you know, he's going to be a 3-4 edge. Not, you know, you're not comparing him to other DNs that are like 270, 275. 4.69, great speed. Elite in the explosion. Like, that guy's a pretty damn good athlete. Like, maybe, you know, you look at the Shamar Stewarts of the draft. Like, these guys don't have great college production. Maybe that's something that's kind of creeping up there. Oh, what did he do? 2023, so 2 years ago. He had 14.5 TFLs, 9.5 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles. Oh, well, he must have had a bad year coming up by the dip, right, C4? Oh, no, in 2024, 19 TFLs, 16 sacks, and another 3 forced fumbles. I think, honestly, the only reason why he fell is he's going to be a pass rush specialist. He's not going to be a guy that I think you really want to have out there as, you know, with his size, be a run game guy, inconsistent in the run game. But for a guy that you're getting in the 6th round with that kind of production, welcome to the rotation. You don't put him out there on 1st down. You put him out there on 3rd down, best case scenario. I think this is going to be very interesting competition because I think what his role could be is what, when you look at our depth chart here, like you're looking at a guy that's coming in, absolutely. You have Azeez Ojulari on a 1-year deal. So if he's not playing great, boom, long-term, rookie contract, don't have to worry about it. You have Bryce Huff, you have Josh Uche. All these guys are going to be fighting for snaps to get on the field. And if the sacks ain't coming, if you're not doing your job, you're not getting after the quarterback, that is what you're brought in here. I think we have a proven track record from obviously a college level. You got to assume that he makes the jump. But we just got a pass rush specialist coming to a position that after Jalix Hunt and Nolan Smith is wide open. We have Gambles, 1 year on Ojulari. Let's see what happens. Uche, buy the dip, 1 year, see what happens. Bryce Huff, can he repair his reputation? Let's get him, approve it, see what happens. You throw in a guy that's coming off of, you know, dude, 16 sacks in this. And I know it's a little casual. Like, just, well, you can't just look at the sack. I think when it's this apparent, you absolutely can. He might only have 1 pass rush move. He might only have, like, he just kind of has a quick little rip and get under the edge rusher. If that's all he got, specialist, I'm fine with. Absolutely fine with. Because if you're a specialist, you are the master of something. I don't necessarily want, and I think when we look at pass rushers, I don't necessarily want the jack of all trades. It's nice to have. If you have a guy that's like a Myles Garrett, run defender, done. Pass rush, done. Do everything at an elite level. You're not getting those guys in the 6th round. In the 6th round, if you give me a guy that's really, really, really good at one thing, and he can specialize on that one thing, that I'd take that over a guy that might not be as nearly good athletically, but might be a little more well-rounded, might be able to chip in a little bit more in the run game. Get me the guy. You swing. This is a sacks-driven league. I love this pick. To finish out, absolute A+. And it's not A+ with the draft grade, draft review that he's going to keep that production up. How did a team, we're going to get 16 sack player out of this. But I think for the value in the 6th round, to take a swing on a guy that could carve out that niche role on the defense as a pass rush specialist, and he has an athletic frame, 9'2" Raz, 38-inch vert, sign me up every day of the week. An outstanding way to finish the draft for the Philadelphia Eagles. We round out with some UDFAs. We got Maxon Hook, who is a teammate best friend, I believe is the scouting report, was roommates with Quinyon Mitchell at Toledo, who had a 4th, 5th round grade, getting him as a UDFA strong safety, 8.51 RAS score. You want to look at the production here. He is 3 times in a row, 2022, 2023, 2024, first team All-MAC. This is a guy with 22 PBUs, 7 interceptions to his name, tested well enough to be like, all right, that's pretty interesting. You're getting at this point, too, best for these UDFA guys. You know, you're trying to see, are you going to be a special teamer? Is that how you're going to be able to crack the roster? I thought the value was absolutely there. That was one of our top UDFA signings. A small school running back in Shunderick Powell from Central Arkansas, elite speed and explosion grade, 5'7", 183. But he's a guy that's been like an automatic 1,000-yard rusher at a small level, and I love to see someone with that juice just come into training camp, see what he can do. Maybe there's some special teams ability. We have to get Cooper DeSheen off of kickoff return, so any and all comers that could potentially take that role, I am there for it. Then we go to get some Gators, man. The more Gators, the better. We got Montrell Johnson. I will say, as a Florida Gator diehard, very surprised that he was this athletic. Elite in the speed. I did not see 4.41. I did not see a guy that would be able to post that type of broad jump. He was just kind of like a grinder for the Gators. Now, if he did get out in space and could get to a second level, he'd bring some juice. He was just a solid running back for the Gators. You look at a guy, he had over 3,000 yards in his career, left with Billy Napier from Louisiana, joined with Florida, was kind of always his guy. I'd like to project that he's kind of scared away Trevor Etienne from the Gators. He then transferred to the Georgia Bulldogs and was, I think it was a 5th round pick of the Carolina Panthers. Montrell just wasn't giving up the spot. I think he's a guy that won't create a lot of space for himself, but if the lanes are there, he can absolutely go in and hit it. I think we're looking for depth at running back. We're looking for guys that are camp bodies that could surprise and push for that final RB spot. I think with A.J. Dillon, I'd love to see him make the roster. Happy to see any and all Gators that can make this team. I'm sick and tired of all the Alabama and Georgia guys. I get it. Great players, but maybe we squeeze in a couple more Florida Gators every now and again, Howie. Howie's a Gator. He knows. He's sick of it. My favorite UDFA player was a 5th round graded pick, Holland Pierce from Rutgers. And if I look at this draft class, I'd say of all the picks, the one I was just like, okay, was Myles Hinton, the tackle from Michigan in the 6th round. If we swapped that out and we got Holland Pierce in the 6th round and then got Hinton as UDFA, I'd be like, yes, that helps improve the draft in my mind. Holland Pierce, if you were looking at the perfect blueprint Stoutland U tackle in this year's class, there was really 2 that stood out. One was Jalen Travis from Iowa State. Philly brought him in for a top 30 visit. He went like 2 picks ahead of the Eagles to the Colts, and then immediately the Eagles traded back. Says to me that's who they wanted. Number 2, if you couldn't get him, is Holland Pierce, a walk-on at Rutgers, one of the best stories in all, as no-star recruit, 6'8", 341 pounds, played to be a second-team All-Big Ten tackle in 2024. 36-inch arms, 88 wingspan. That is, like, good luck. Now, a lot of work needs to be done. But when you talk about, and you see Howie Roseman talk about unique traits, and I believe he's talked about that for offensive linemen with Stout. He's like, we get Stout guys that have these unique things, and you let Stout kind of take care of the rest. 88-inch wingspan is unheard of for the position. Like, I don't know what Jordan Mailata's wingspan is. I don't know what some of the other big tackle wingspan, like the freak guys, like Faalele on the Ravens. He's another big 6'8" guy. 88, like, it might be the biggest in the NFL. Just pause. So when you have something like that that's unteachable, when you just, like, that is something that Stoutland is like, I can't give Hinton, I can't give Cameron Williams, these guys, an 88 in wingspan. So it's just another thing that's going in his favor. I think for, like, he's probably gonna be a practice squad stash. Same way that, like, you know, you have Mailata a little bit, where you played a little bit more cat and mouse because you didn't want to throw him in the practice squad, have someone else steal him. But I think for Stoutland U, looking for the ultimate, I like him better. I like him the most. If I'm comparing the tackles that we added, Holland Pierce, Myles Hinton, Cameron Williams, I think Pierce would be number 1 on my list out of all those guys. In fact, if we got him as a UDFA, I think that right there, that's why I waited to do this video. I wanted to see some UDFAs that could help me overall include them in this class and feel a little bit better. I think this was a solid draft class for the Philadelphia Eagles. a solid class that is in the first round a home run. And I think more often than not, we are spoiled as a fan base that we were expecting having the unanimous, resounding, that is the best draft class in the NFL. No one can stop us. How does Howie keep getting away with it type draft classes? You're not going to have that every year. I think the haul that we had, we got some nice depth. There would have been absolutely different players that I would have targeted. Braden Swinson just free-falling as a pass rusher. But then we still end up with Powell, Ryland with that production and athletic profile. We got someone that's also very interesting at that position. I think it was weird how we didn't go after a tight end because the word on the street is we're going to trade Dallas Goedert. But does this draft mean that we're going to keep him for one more year? We're going to let him run his contract out? Because if that's what happens, I almost value that as a draft pick. Maybe that will be our third round pick. Our third round pick was the board was so shit, we're just deciding to keep Dallas Goedert. If that's how we're going to do it, throw that into the grades. I think looking back on it, I don't have the minus next to I give it an A- for this class. I think overdrafting Makuba, I can look past that because he is one of my favorite players in this class, and I'm very happy that we got him. But in a perfect world, that second, third round would have went a little bit better for the Philadelphia Eagles. It takes two to tango, but I'm kind of not putting my negativity into the players that we got. I'm putting my negativity in what at least I know, and that was I wanted Howie to be a little more aggressive at that spot. Takes two to tango. Maybe know that teams were budging. Maybe that wasn't a possibility, but knowing what we know about Howie Roseman, I think finding a way to get and be aggressive in that second round, and the fact that we had to just kind of sit and wait, and then we get Makuba, kind of got him in the third round, then we traded out of the third round. That whole process kind of hurts the draft a little bit for me. Would have went different, maybe on a couple prospects in day 3, but you can make logical decisions and reasonings why we got those linemen, why we got center depth, why we got 3 tackles, including UDFA guys that could absolutely enroll and be thriving in Stoutland U. Did we need a backup quarterback? Is there something we don't know about Tanner McKee, potentially on the trade block? But McCord, you can live with it. A lot of similarities. We get athletic linebacker in Mundon. We get great value in a pass rush specialist. Mac McWilliams, wait and see. Everybody that's looked at him and scouted him says better than expected. Crushed it at the Senior Bowl. I'm going A. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Do you think it's an A draft? A-. I'm going A-. A-, B+, somewhere in that range. I'd love to hear what you guys think. What is your favorite pick of the draft? What was your least favorite pick of the draft? What player maybe would you have gone a little bit differently? Let me know in the comment section below. If it is your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. Smash the like button if you enjoyed. Until next time, it's your boy C4 saying peace out. Love you. Have a good one. And if you're watching this somehow on this and you don't know I have another channel, I have a Madden channel. And I'm going to be doing realistic rebuilds of all these teams post-draft over on the channel now. So if that's something that sounds interesting to you, go check out the main channel. Throw it a little subscribe button while you're at it.